The reason I was able to get a perfect 180 score on the LSAT and improve my student scores by over 20 points on the LSAT was because I simplified and didn't overcomplicate the test. So in this video, I'm going to share with you how and why I simplified the LSAT and didn't overcomplicate it. So hopefully you could avoid some of the same mistakes that I made and that some of my students made before we started working together. So I remember when I started LSAT studying, I felt overwhelmed by all the information I was receiving. I went out and bought a few textbooks. I started watching YouTube videos. I started doing Google searches, and I was just overflooded and oversaturated with information. Everything seemed so complicated, like learning about what a contrapositive was and question types, and it just seemed so overwhelming. I didn't know where to start. There were so many services, so many platforms, so many textbooks, and some of the information was conflicting with each other. Some tutors would say to diagram, others would say not to diagram. Some tutors would teach these complex strategies of like reading the question first or skipping reading passages, and I was just so lost and so overwhelmed. And nowadays I hear the same thing from all of my students. I hear them, they just feel so overwhelmed by all the LSAT information out there, by all the complexity. They just feel like it's way too complicated and not simple enough to improve on the LSAT. They pay like thousands of dollars on tutoring, and the tutors overcomplicate the LSAT, again, teaching these complex diagrams and strategies of reading the question first and obsessing over question types. It's just way too much information for them. And I was in the same boat. I was overwhelmed. But I remember hearing some advice, not just even for the LSAT, just life advice, saying, simplifying things a lot of times could help you move further and improve on something. And then I remember I applied that thinking to my LSAT studying and the LSAT. And that was a shift in my trajectory on the LSAT. Because that's how at least my brain, I don't know about everyone else's, but my brain works best with simplicity. Whether it's, being a student and improving my grades, or even things like working out, staying healthy, like living a healthy diet, eating a healthy diet. Simplicity always has made my life improvement and self-improvement and progress towards any goal much smoother, much simpler, and even much faster. And once I applied this to the LSAT, once I said, screw all this overcomplicated stuff, screw all this information of trying to obsess over 1 million things in my head, once I just said, I'm just going to simplify this test, study consistently, not burn myself out, and just take the test the way it was given to me, not trying to gimmick or hack the test, trying to truly understand what this test is asking me in the simplest way possible. That's when things started to change for me. Not only did my score skyrocket, but I was mentally in a much better place. I had more time to focus on other things besides the LSAT. I felt I never, got burnout. And now I teach this to all my students, and they come back and tell me very similar experiences to what I had. They said before they felt so confused and there was so much information out there, but once they simplified the LSAT and just kept a few frameworks in the back of their head, that's when their scores really started to improve. And they feel much more sane and calm about the process. And by the way, if you want more individual help simplifying the LSAT, you could purchase a month of my tutoring with the link in the description. So I simplified the LSAT, but how exactly did I do this? So the first thing I did is I stopped obsessing over question types. I know services like 7Sage and tutors break up the LSAT into like dozens, like 20, 30 plus question types, and oh my gosh, I couldn't even imagine trying to take the LSAT with all that in your head. Instead of obsessing over question types, what I did is I had a simple process on how I attacked every logical reasoning question and every reading passage, and I didn't change this regardless of question type. And one of the reasons why I did this was because I stopped reading the question first. And if you don't read the question first, then you don't know what question type there is. You can't even think about the question type. So you treat every passage the same. And the way you treat the passage is, it sounds so simple, and so straightforward, but you'd be surprised how many students overlook this. By understanding what you're reading, by not moving on to the next sentence until you've completely understood, digested, and reacted to the sentence that you're reading. And I think a quote that really resonates with this is, people need to be reminded more than they need to be informed of new information. And we all know that when we're reading on the LSAT, we should understand and digest what we're reading, but I don't think we take that advice as seriously as we should. We need to make sure we understand and digest every single word on reading comp and logical reasoning. We don't move on until we've understood every single word. And if there's a word we don't understand, then we use context clues and we spend a little bit more time. So instead of obsessing over question types, throw all that outside of your head and just focus on understanding the passage, not reading the question first, but reading the passage first. Understand what they're saying. And then over time, with consistent practice, you'll naturally start to distinguish question types through organic pattern recognition. So the second thing I eliminated in order to simplify the LSAT was I stopped doing gimmicks and hacks. So a lot of tutors talk about, hey, this is a way to hack the LSAT, to gimmick the LSAT, like reading the question first or skipping around reading comp passages, things like that. That's not how you master and beat the LSAT. You master and beat the LSAT by not trying to gimmick the test, but trying to truly understand and master the test, by understanding what you're reading, by doing the test the way they intended and made the test, the people who made the LSAT. Another thing I did in order to simplify the LSAT is I stopped worrying about the clock. I stopped worrying about time, about speeding up, because I saw that this was just adding another variable in my head. So what I did is whenever I opened the LSAT, the first thing I would do is I would turn the clock off and I would focus on the one question in front of me, the one sentence in front of me, going one question at a time. Because I saw if I had the clock on, it was just another variable, just overcomplicating it. Whereas no, I wanted to focus on accuracy, not speed. Finally, the last thing I did to simplify and not overcomplicate the LSAT was I stopped doing all these complex, crazy long burnout study days where I would study for 4 hours, 5 hours one day, and then just feel so burnt out and tired and taking full practice tests and not having the energy to continue the rest of that day or the days after. No, I stopped doing that, and what I did is I simplified. I said, okay, the first thing I do when I'm going to wake up is I'm going to do my 1 hour of studying a day. If I want to add one more hour on top of that, then I'll add an hour of drilling. But I simplified. I said I'm not going to sit through a whole 4 or 5 hour test and burn myself out or do all these complex study schedules. I'm going to study 1 hour a day. I'm going to alternate one day doing a time section, another day do an hour of drilling, one day an hour of a time section, an hour of drilling. And then I would, simplify the process of LSAT studying to its most bare bones. And with this, I was doing one full test a week. I was able to get high quality review and I didn't burn myself out because all I knew is, hey, when I wake up, I'm going to do my 1 hour a day. And I know it's either doing a time section or drilling, and it's that simple. So that's what I did. I went slow. I just focused on one question at a time. I studied 1 hour a day. I oversimplified the test so much that even a middle schooler could follow the study schedule and improve. But for me, that's how my brain works. My brain always is supported and works best when I simplify things and I don't overcomplicate things. And the LSAT for me was the same way. And I'm so grateful that I made the switch, that I stopped diagramming, that I stopped obsessing over question types. And this advice of not overcomplicating things and simplifying has helped me in almost every aspect of my life. And the LSAT isn't an exception. Doing this honestly changed my life, got me a perfect score on the LSAT. It allows me to support and create hundreds of new attorneys and help them in their LSAT process. It got me into Harvard Law School, into Stanford Law School as well. And I really hope this information helps you in any way. Okay, bye.